Farley or Cheryl?
Oh, Mrs. Farley.
Mrs. Farley. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so glad to be here. Again, my name's Keith. Do you guys recognize me? Were you here at the festival in the spring? Who came to the festival in the spring? Awesome. So you were at the Youth Works program. So I run the education program at SF Film. We put on the International Film Festival. We do programs throughout the whole year. I'm saying all of this because we really want to be a resource for you. Who here has made a video clip or a movie in the last year? Pretty much almost all of you, or you're going to be probably in this next semester. So we really want to provide as many resources for you as young filmmakers, as young voices. Who is our youth resident in the audience? Reed. Reed over there is a new member of our youth residency, which is made for high school BIPOC filmmakers to connect with SF Film and professional filmmakers. Congratulations, Reed, for being a part of that new group. Hopefully they're going to have a great experience and they can tell you all about it, because we would love for you to all apply next year if you'd like to. If you've made a film, submit it. It's free to submit your film to the film festival, and you could be screened at a film festival that is the oldest film festival in North America. So check that out. Let's give a round of applause to all your teachers for setting this up. They are truly the reason that we are here today. I've worked with your teachers for probably about 10 years now, and every time I come here, they're so great to work with, and the students are so amazing. So whenever I have a special opportunity, I love to come here because I know it's going to be a great experience. So please thank them later today, thank them tomorrow, thank them as much as you can, because teachers deserve all of that thanks. We also want to thank Sony and Sony Picture Animation for allowing us to do this. I want to give a special thanks to Kira and Garth for all of their assistance in making this happen. This is a pretty amazing group of guests. I'm almost as excited as you guys are. I'm probably 10 times more excited than you guys are. When I was your age, when I was in high school, I'll date myself, the first Batman Tim Burton movie came out with Michael Keaton. I was probably about 15 or 16. If I would have had the opportunity to meet the filmmakers, to meet Tim Burton, to meet some of the actors, to meet producers or any of the visual effects artists in that film, my life would have totally changed. So I'm hoping that today this experience will charge you up creatively, get you excited about your own voice, the stories that you're going to be able to tell, and we're excited to see those stories. So let's get started. So before I bring out our guests, I want to, throw a little something on the screen here just to get us, everybody's watched the film, right? Everyone's watched the film. All right, so let's just watch a little teaser here to get us in the mood, and then we'll bring out our guests.
What I love about animation is you begin the process with a small group of people, and then over the course of the movie, it becomes a crew of 1,000.
It takes about a Spider-Verse worth of humanity to make a Spider-Verse film.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody brings the same level of dedication and care and passion because they know what this film represents to so many people.
They got it going on.
People know how much I love Spider-Man, and so I got so many calls of people being like, I know this is like the greatest achievement of your life, and they were correct.
It's been one of the coolest things I've ever got to do, to be part of this worldwide creative family that is all pooling together to work on this.
I'm very honored and grateful to be a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
My visual effects team on this film is about 800 people.
There's so many.
The team that's creating everything from modeling sets to the finishing work of the final images.
With all the technology, it's still handwork. You have to direct a lot of artists.
I've never seen a crew come together to make the impossible happen.
Everyone's bringing a lot of their own creativity and filmmaking and out-of-the-box thinking to every shot in the movie.
Yes. It's a work that requires a lot of people that are incredibly skilled. It's a team sport, but the team is massive.
Oh my God, amazing.
All right. So before I bring out our guests, I want to just explain what we're going to do here. We're going to have a Q&A. We've got a table all set up for everybody with mics. We've got 2 mics down here on the aisles. I have so many questions, but I don't want to ask the questions. I want you guys to ask the questions. I'll throw some in if you don't have any ready to go. But once we get started, I'll start with one. And then if you want to have, let's have at the most at any microphone 2 people standing. You don't want to stand and have this real long line. You're going to be standing there for a long time. So we'll have 2 at each one. If someone leaves, then the next person, if you're ready for a question, come on up for that. I know we're not going to get to every question out there. I know there's some students who have to leave a little early. Why don't we try to get some questions from those students first? So if you have to leave early, try to get a question in first. If you are a little nervous and you don't want to ask your question in front of the big group, after we're done in the theater, we're going to go in the lobby, and everyone's going to be back out there. You can ask them individual questions. If you want to talk to someone individually, you can do that as well. All right, you guys ready? All right, so please help me welcome all of these amazing guests. First, we have our directors, Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. We also have producer Amy Pascal, and producers and writers Chris Miller and Phil Lord. Grab a seat, guys. So you guys can pop those microphones off and maybe figure out how you want to share them. Would you do me a favor and introduce yourselves each, just in case they haven't been doing their research and looking you guys up before this?
I'm Phil Lord. I'm one of the writers and producers of this movie, and I have 3 waters.
I'm Chris Miller, also one of the writers and producers of the movie, and I only have 1.
Sorry, pal. Oh, partners.
I'm Amy Pascal, one of the producers of this movie, and I have 2 waters. And 1 I brought from home.
Hi, I'm Justin Thompson. I'm one of the directors.
Hey, I'm Kemp Powers. I'm another one of the directors.
And I need a mic. I'm Joaquim Dos Santos, and I'm the 3rd director.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys for being here. They're all heading to Pixar after this to show the quality of this experience that you're getting. They're going to talk to some Pixar folks after this. You're getting a little preview of that. I'm going to start with just one question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. I don't know if you heard what I was saying before about sort of when I was a kid growing up, if I would have had the chance to meet someone like you at an experience like this, it probably would have changed what I did. I'm happy what I do, but I might have been making films if I would have met someone like you and had a panel like this. So I'm hoping this is an experience for these kids that will inspire them. Does any of you have a memory, an experience of that spark for you? Did you have someone you met when you were in high school, when you were even younger, that made you, you might have wanted to be a filmmaker, but that experience where you maybe had a mentor or someone that you had an experience meeting that changed your lives and put you on the course to become who you are today?
I saw Barbarella, and then I wanted to be Jane Fonda. That's how it all happened.
Does anybody know what Barbarella is?
Oh, God, I'm sorry. That just shows you how damn old I am.
So you just saw it, and when you saw it, that was the moment you...
I just, I loved her. I thought that was awesome. And I thought, there's all these women who have all these big jobs, and that was it. I knew where I wanted to go.
I had a weird sort of destiny thing. So I was born in Portugal. My family's crest in Portugal is actually a spider. So Spider-Man was like the earliest pop culture thing that I remember ever seeing ever. So it sort of just put me on a path. It's the first drawing I've ever done. It's the first thing I ever wanted to sort of aspire to be. So yeah, that just sort of led me to being a comics fan, being an animation fan, being a film fan. It just all really grew from that.
I was watching a movie called The Muppet Movie when I was a kid, and there was a scene where Kermit the Frog and Fozzie Bear are driving a car, and I was like, how do they do that? Where do the puppeteers go, and how do they see where the car's going? Why don't they crash the car? And I started drawing pictures of where I thought the puppeteers would be and how they could make it work. And then that's when I realized that each shot didn't have to be the same method, and it made me really excited. And I started I took my parents' big giant VCR video camera and started making films from that.
Did you find out how they did it? You know, like back then,
way
we had
later,
magazines,
way later.
right?
Yes,
and we
this
had
is
other things.
pre-internet, so there was no way to know or verify it later. But there were books about it later. But it was a lot about how they made him ride the bicycle, which is what you would think I would have been. There's a scene where Kermit the Frog rides a bicycle, and you'd think that would be the thing that would be like, how did they do that? No, it was the driving the car part.
I had like a reading group in elementary school, and in the 6th grade, we were reading ahead, and it was Florida, so it was like, you know, swamp, and we read the 8th grade reader, and then they ran out of books for us to read, and they didn't know what to do with us. There were like 10 of us, so they sent us to the library. We're like, they have books there, so go to the library. And the librarian had like a VHS camera and a tripod. I don't know why. But most of the time we were just like writing and drawing comic books in there. And then we were like, we should use the camera to make a commercial for the comic books. It was called Violence Comics. And then I wouldn't say the most sophisticated, but we had a lot of brio. And so we made a commercial, and we figured out if you started and stopped the video camera, you could make it look like things appeared and disappeared. And so we sort of, filmmaking is, you saw me say it, it's like a team sport, and that was like the first team.
Yeah, it's funny because everything that I do now for a career, I didn't know it was a job when I was a kid. So, you know, when I was really young, I used to make comic books with a good buddy of mine. And it was one of those things where it's like, we made comics for a long time, but everyone kind of like started falling away because like there's no job to get from this. But I was really into the idea of storytelling. So, you know, comics was a medium that we did when we were kids, and I think it was just like the first person to really encourage me to kind of continue pursuing it was just like a professor of mine in college.
Justin?
I think I was kindergarten, actually, and I refused to do my ABCs, and I refused to do anything that required higher functioning brains, and all I wanted to do was finger paint. And I remember there was a specific moment where I was trying to finger paint, and I'm not joking, it's Spider-Man. I was trying to finger paint Spider-Man, and the teacher said, you have to sit down and do your ABCs now. And I started screaming and had a fit, and because I said, the foot's not done. And I needed to finish it. And I got sent to the principal's office, and I knew from right then I was gonna pretty much do that for the rest of my life. And then I got into filmmaking because I knew I was gonna be an artist from that moment, and my parents had to work it out with the school that how could we make this kid do learning and do things? They were very generous, and eventually when I got to high school, there were some other kids in the theater program there wasn't a film program at my school. This is amazing what you guys have here. There were some other kids in the theater program that I was in that were doing tape to tape, VHS to VHS, and they were like filming themselves, and I just started hanging out with them, and we started figuring out how to make films together. And it became obsessed because it was like, now I could take art that I'd been doing since I was a little kid, and I could take the theater and all the things we were doing there, and we could put it together into this narrative format that was just like incredible. And then we just by chance met some people who were like saying, hey, does anybody have any films you want to submit to the Student Film Festival in 1992, the LA Student Film Festival? And we got lucky, and they accepted some of our stuff. And I just met some people there who, it was just like kind of like all this random series of like really fortunate accidents that and that's kind of how I met you guys even. and it sort of like has been like a labor of love since I think I was as small as I can remember.
That's great.
Okay, I'm going to go again.
Go ahead.
Everybody was so serious. So now I'm going to be more serious. So I was a crappy student, didn't get good grades, dyslexic, so many learning disorders, all that kind of stuff. But there was a certain point where I discovered storytelling. and I discovered how stories work, and I fell in love with it, and it became an obsession, and it became something that I understood. And I don't draw, I don't paint, I don't do any of the things any of these guys doing, but I love what they do, and I admire what they do, and it turns me on, and I get to be a part of a world where I get to work with all these people all the time that inspires me and changes me every day. So that's how it happened for me.
And I think your experience is probably pretty similar to a lot of students who are not doing great in school. It's because they haven't found what they love yet, and they might not have that passion. You know, it's good to do good in school, right? You always hear that constantly, but once you find that thing that you're really passionate about, and I think you all are lucky to have this program. Hopefully, even if you don't become filmmakers, you're going to be creative and you're going to know that you have your voice. So whatever you do after high school, you're going to have those skills to do it and the passion to do it as well. So who has questions out there? I would love for some questions to come from the students. Who wants to get us started? Come on down. You don't have to raise your hand. Come on down to the mic there. And if you could, if you're comfortable with it, say your name and what grade you are, and then ask your question. And if two more want to come down here, why don't you get started right over there? Oh, is her mic hot? If not, I'll bring mine down to you.
Nice.
Let's start with this and we'll figure that out.
My name is Chloe, and I'm in 11th grade, and I wanted to know how you guys went about character design and finding the right designs for characters and the right voice actor to fit those characters.
Great question to start us off. Are you interested in character design? Is that why you asked that? Do you do any character design yourself? Awesome. Thank you for that first question. So can you guys talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'll start. Well, the way I think we tend to approach it, where'd you go? Oh, there she is. With casting, it's with casting a voice, it's the same thing as casting a character design. You sort of try to figure out emotionally what that character is from the inside out, actually, like story, like Amy says, internally what's going on with this character and how can you externalize that into a person, you know, that we would recognize instantly as embodying those internal characteristics. So that's like sort of like the big thought that's going into it. That's like the high-minded thought. But then but then there's like just trying to find appeal and simple silhouette and all those great academic artsy kind of things. But ultimately, you're driven by the story and trying to find something that's going to fit the emotional tone of what you're trying to express so the audience can get an instant read on who that character is even before they speak. And that's like where we start, but you can certainly add to that.
Yeah, like when we're casting an animated feature, it's really no different than casting a live action feature. There's actors who return to our film, but they have all these new characters that we want to have in the film. And we have a casting director, and we have all these actors that we're familiar with, as well as actors we're not familiar with, and we just listen to their voices. We often actually have just a picture of the character up, as we're just listening to people talk and thinking like, does this person sound like that character? Does that person sound like that character? And it's often the person talking in an interview. Like with Daniel Kaluuya is a great example. He plays Spider-Punk. We weren't listening to him in Get Out, because he always does an American accent. All we listened to was him doing interviews, and we were just locking in on his London accent. And we were like, when Daniel Kaluuya is just being Daniel Kaluuya, he just sounds like a punk rocker. He just sounds so cool. So, you know, it's really no different than casting a live action film.
And I think with Daniel, a big part of it was, can he be, can he be does he have like a punk ethos? And the thing about like Daniel, we spent some time with him. We spent a good deal of time convincing him to do the movie. And the more time we spent with him, the more we were like, it has to be him. And the reason it had to be him is because like a lot of people think of like a punk ethos as like defiance, you know? But he brings a sense of playfulness to it and a sense of like, I've been hurt in the past, and so I'm being defiant because I'm not gonna let you hurt me again. And so the sophistication of that and the fact that he as a human being can bring that's coming out of his soul And we go, that's great if we can use that to influence the character and tell the story, we're gonna win big together. So part of it is like, it's kind of like it's like matchmaking between the character and the person who's going to perform that person.
I'm glad you brought up Spider-Punk. I mean, he's one of my favorite characters, but we could talk about each one of the characters in depth, and maybe it'll come up. You know, maybe someone has a favor and they want to ask a little bit more about someone that they love or connect with in the film. But let's go back down here. Do we know if our mics are working yet? Let's try that one.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Jayana. I'm a junior, and I wanted to know like the technicalities of going into like animation. So specifically for the animators, like what majors did you take, or what schools did you take, and what kind of connections did you have like after college?
That's great. Is that something you're interested in? Are you an animator yourself?
Yeah, I am.
Great. So everyone I know has different backgrounds, but maybe some started in animation, or if you weren't necessarily in animation when you were in college, maybe talk a little bit about what your film path was.
Yeah, so you guys have an amazing facility here. I got to say it again, and this opportunity to be part of a film program is amazing. I think Justin and I share a sort of shared origin in that, we both we didn't go to college proper. I can, speaking for myself, I grew up in the Valley in LA, and I was near all the studios, so I had proximity. My high school was just down the street from Film Roman, so as I was walking home from school, I would see The Simpsons being made. I would walk right by their offices. And what would happen is a lot of the animators, at night when they were done with their jobs, basically they all got together and they said, we need to, create some new blood, and we need to infuse the industry with younger artists coming up. So they created a little technical school that was uncredited and but it offered an opportunity to learn directly from the people that were making the film. So me and my friend, who both enjoyed art and both aspired, to get into the industry some way, and we could see, the studios there, we just couldn't get through the door. We started taking classes there, and we realized that, we could get hired directly through that school because we were building portfolios specific, to getting into animation. So yeah, it was like a year and a half. I was working at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, just paying for my classes, and it worked out. The first job I got, I was at the studio from like 8 a.m. till 4 a.m. I'd go to my house, sleep, wake back up. Everybody in the studio had like toys in their offices and art on the walls, and we were all, sort of part of this big family. So yeah, you'll find a way, I think, if an opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll hear, there's lots of different paths. There's not just one path, and they're telling you their path. That doesn't have to be your path. You can figure out what is unique for you and what
the truth is that you. There are animation programs at colleges, there are animation-specific schools, or you can be self-taught. It didn't used to be this way. It used to be there were feeder schools that the studios would hire animators from, but now a lot of people, you can teach yourself online. There are programs that are less expensive than Maya, like Blender and other things that you can use. Or you can draw, and like 2D drawing programs is a new thing from Procreate coming out that's going to be $20 that you can use and make your own films and build a portfolio of stuff. And so there's a bunch of different ways. If you are good and you've developed your skills enough, you can show that to the recruiters at the studios, and they'll hire you regardless of where your experience came from.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's a well-known story now that even on our film, there's a sequence where we hired a 14-year-old animator in Canada, the Lego sequence, because he had just done like a fan version of one of our teaser trailers. And so, when Phil and Chris were talking about adding a Lego sequence, and we were like, we should hire that kid who did the video, and I was like, can we do that legally? And we
eventually child labor law rules.
Yeah, we
literally
figured it.
emailed him. We emailed him, and his family was like, "This is a scam. This isn't real." And so they didn't respond for weeks. And they finally reached out to Patrick, our production designer, who lived in the same town as them, and go like, "Is this real?" And he was like, "It's very real, and we need your help, and we need it now." And he did an amazing job.
The lesson is check your email.
Check your email. As long as it's not a prince asking for money, you can open it. So I think we got good animation answers on that. I was wondering, let's go to another question, but Amy, could you talk about sort of a producing path? Because, they're probably learning about the different careers that you can have here. Directing always jumps out as the only thing you can do, right? But there's so many different things that are important. Producing, of course, being very important. Can you talk about your path and maybe what direction you could take if producing might be something you're interested in?
I grew up in Los Angeles also. But my parents had nothing to do with the movie business. My mom was a librarian. My dad was an economist. But I thought art and money was something that I understood.
Spreadsheets? Do you like spreadsheets?
Not that much. No. But I understood people, and I felt like I knew how to work with people. And so in the olden days, you used to look in the Hollywood Reporter, and when it came and it was on paper and stuff, and you would look at people who were looking for secretaries. And I started as a secretary, and I worked for this really wonderful man who had come from the BBC and had no place in Hollywood, and was a really sensitive, lovely person who would rather bake bread than make movies. But he taught me about writers, and he taught me that the only thing that really mattered was writing, and that without writing there isn't anything. And I understood and learned about storytelling from him, from Tony. And so I started as secretary, and I was a secretary for a really long time, babysitting, that kind of secretary, I wasn't very good at it because I can't spell and I couldn't type. So it was really quick that I had to get promoted to something else, since I wasn't really very good at that job, even though I did it for a long time. And then from there, from working with Tony, I went and worked at a studio because someone told me that if you wanted to be a producer, you had to be a studio executive, which isn't really true. But it was a really good education for me, and I did it for a whole lot longer than I meant to, but I learned so much.
That's great. And that's another path, right? It's having connections, meeting someone who inspires you, and having mentors, but also no job is too small, right? Every job could mean something, could lead to something. So
Yes, can I say one more thing
Oh, yeah,
about
go
that?
ahead.
Because it doesn't really matter what your first job is. It doesn't matter at all. It matters who the person is that you're working for, because good rubs off as easily as bad. And those first people that you work for, who instill a kind of morality in you, and who you respect and want to be the kind of people that they are, that's what you want. It doesn't matter what the actual job is.
Exactly. All right, how about over there? Go ahead.
The largest roadblock you had getting to your position was?
A roadblock. So in the film, or just in their careers?
Just in your careers.
In their
getting to where
careers.
you are.
Did any of you, I don't know if everyone had one, but maybe we can call out one or two. Anyone have a hurdle, a point? I'm thinking of even
I think our biggest roadblock was Amy. we made a movie for our first movie for Amy. Amy is being very modest. She's one of those brilliant people to ever do this job. She ran a studio, and she ran it for a really long time. And if you made a movie for Amy, you had to get past Amy sitting in the movie theater next to you, and this is what the experience is like. Oh my God, this is so good. Oh, what is this? I don't like his face. We're gonna change his face. Oh God, it's bad now. I don't know what to do. And so she watches a movie with her body. She is super engaged or not. And when not, she tells you the truth. And so we were making a movie called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And sometimes it made her love it. And sometimes she was like, this is bad, guys. And she gave us so much help and put so many people in our lives that taught us so much. But it was a combination of nurturing and truth. Just like, I remember we had a bad screening. She sat down next to us and said, you're about to learn a lot about your movie. And so the thing about this process, this like filmmaking process or any project-oriented thing, is that you're going to mess up constantly. You're going to not know the answer constantly because everything you're making is something that's never been made before. It's not about being perfect. It's not even about being that talented. It's about having desire and learning as you go and letting the movie tell you what it needs to be. And that goes for a song or a piece of creative writing. Whatever that is listening. We make movies with our brains, but we watch them with our bodies, and listening to what the movie is asking for is a really important part of it.
Yeah, it's a great lesson because it's so subjective, and you can have someone love something and someone hate something, and you have to keep creating. I was wondering if one of you could, maybe if you've had this experience, I think of Miles in the film and how he's told he's an anomaly and he shouldn't be Spider-Man. Did anyone have a point in their life where someone told you, you can't do this or you shouldn't be doing this? Either that you're not representing the image of who's telling these stories, or just someone saying like, you're not very good at this, you shouldn't do this. Did anybody have an experience like that?
That's kind of been the dominant experience for me for a lot of my life. I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, it kind of started with my own family because they couldn't really wrap their head around this thing that I was into. I'm from New York, and there were like very specific jobs. You were a firefighter, you work for the phone company. If you're smart, you go to college and go to law school. But like the things, they couldn't really wrap their heads around. It took me such a long time to get any kind of stability and success in this business. So it's funny, before this, I worked on a movie called Soul for Pixar, and a lot of Soul was just kind of like Joe Gardner was this guy who was like middle-aged, and he was talented, but he just couldn't catch a break. That was just like what I was living in terms of my own career, which made me kind of perfect for that film. So I think even going back to that earlier question, I think the biggest roadblock is navigating the failures, because when you see the film on the screen, you're seeing the success. But for every success, I cannot count how many failures we have, large and small, projects that we're passionate about and we work on for years, and they don't get made, or they get canceled, or you're working on something, you're writing on a show, and you get fired. Like it's like there's so many more failures than every success, and I think it's developing the fortitude to kind of push through the failures so that you're even like there at the end when the success can come. So it's not just professional, I think it's also personal, because the nature of what we do, so many people are passionate about doing it, and it's so competitive that I don't think it's inappropriate to say that statistically speaking, it's almost as hard as like being a pro athlete. When you get into the Writers Guild, they say statistically speaking, it's harder to be a Writers Guild member than it is to be a pro baseball player. Well, if you walk into a classroom and say, what do you want to do for your career? And you say, I want to be a pro athlete. You'll say, like, get a backup plan, kid. Well, that's what we all wanted to do, and we never got backup plans. We just kind of kept on plowing forward. So I think it's the navigating.
And you have to internalize that the failure is part of the game.
Yes.
It's like nobody becomes like a great basketball player without like missing shots.
Yes.
Yeah, the most successful person in film or in athletics, Michael Jordan, not getting on his team in high school his first try, right? So it's a commonality of everyone who's successful. Yeah. So I want to warn you guys, in a minute or two, I think the bell's going to go off, so I don't want our guests to get startled. And I know some of our students have to leave at that point. If you have to go to your class and what you're doing only takes a half an hour or so, we're going to be back out in the lobby in about 40 minutes. If you want to come back, if you didn't get to ask your question, please do so. Let's go down here for the next question.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm a sophomore, and I have a question for Christopher and Paul, and it's a writing question. I'm a fan of Clone High. I have a question. What were how did you take the criticism for the reboot and how, since that there was many mixed reviews and how characters were changed and how personalities were more different in how episodes were made as well. And also, will Gandhi's character ever be retconned from the original or changed? Because I really love Gandhi as a character.
Deep dive question.
Deep dive.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, there was a show that we made 20 years ago called Clone High about clones of historical figures that go to high school, like Abe Lincoln and Cleopatra and Joan of Arc and Gandhi and JFK. And 20 years later, there was there's actually 2 new seasons, the one of which hasn't aired yet, that have come out on what I guess is called Max. And it took a while to figure out how to make that show make sense now, I think, and it was took a little while to find its footing, but the truth is that Gandhi may come back.
The thing with any project is and it relates to this, the movie that we just finished together is we try not to look backwards. We try to go, we're here to imagine something new, and we might take some of the inspiration from something that we made before, but we made a whole entire different movie with some of the same characters, and some of them didn't come back, and I have an emotional triggering experience when I hear the bell, like I'm late for math. So in other words, part of our creative process, everyone's creative process is let's try to find a new thing. So we would never attempt to make another season of a show and have it be exactly the same, And the other thing is we would never make a Spider-Verse movie. It's let's just run it back, It's what's something, can we use this as cover fire so that we can go and make something even more ambitious.
Questions so far have been great. And keep deep diving. If you have a deep dive into a character or a favorite, if you know everybody's work, I will prompt you. No one ask about the next Spider-Verse film because they're going to be very tight-lipped about that. Let's focus on this Spider-Verse film. Let's go over there. You want to go ahead?
Hi, my name is Priscilla. I'm a junior, and I just want to know something a little personal. I know Hakeem already said a little bit about it, but I just want to know if you guys had any personal connection with Marvel or Spider-Man younger, when you were younger or even now, to get you to, make Spider-Man and stuff like that.
Are you a Marvel or comic book fan yourself?
Yeah, my dad was a big one, so.
So did he share it with you when you were little?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man, I'm from New York, so I was always drawn to Marvel more than DC as a kid because Marvel existed in New York City. So, growing up in Brooklyn, Westchester, where the X-Men lived, that's a place that you went to. And I think Spider-Man just being a normal kid, he wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't, a scientist. He was just a kid who was going through the things that kids in public schools go through was really the big draw for me. I think that he's always been one of my favorite characters because of that, because he also, his world kind of represented the world outside my window. That being said, I think there were just some universal things about feeling like an outcast, that Spider-Man really tapped into for me when I was young.
I think comic books, when I was 14, I was obsessed with comic books since I was a little kid. Like I said, I was in kindergarten, I was trying to paint Spider-Man. But when I was 14, my first job was actually in a comic book store. And I wanted to work there just so I could be around the comics and read them, because my parents couldn't afford to give me money to buy them. So I just wanted to be in the comic book store to read them. And I would take them and I would fold them out, and I would try on a piece of paper to just draw the page, I'd copy the comic books, and that's how I learned layout, that's how I learned how to draw figures, that's how I learned how to render things, is I would just try to copy the line work and the hatching and all the stuff, and staging. I learned staging from trying to copy comic books. Storytelling too, visual narrative, like how they would connect words with story and how they would represent action or dialogue or emotion, depending on what I learned it all from comics. And I was 14, so they couldn't hire me legally, so they agreed to like pay me in comic books. And that's how I got all my comic books.
That sounds like
they
were taking advantage of you. That's
They
what it sounds
were,
like.
and I let them, and I enjoyed it.
No, we're not allowed to pay you. We'll pay you in comic books.
Yeah, but no, I mean, for me, it's always, and so this is was like a real like coming home kind of dream come true kind of thing.
Let's. So I want to, before we go to the next question, everyone who's in line, I don't want you to have to stand the whole time. So why don't you fan yourselves out into the first row there, keep your place in line so you know you're next. Over there, do the same thing. So that way you're not standing while you're waiting, and make sure you know who's next. And I think you're ready to go right here, yeah. Go ahead, sit down so you don't have to stand the whole time.
Hi, I'm Nicholas, I'm a senior. Which character took the longest to design and create? Like Spider-Punk or...
Yeah, did you have a particular character who maybe ran into some challenges, or
I think,
it took a while for you to really land on the perfect?
Well, I mean, Punk was a character that people wanted us to take out of the movie for a long time because they were like, oh, we could do the story without him. But to us, he was really important, and because he was Miles' only ally at a time when he didn't have anybody. And we thought he would be a really important character, but it challenged us to make him actually be more important. And every character went through a period where he didn't have, this one character fell out of favor or wasn't working. There's a long time that Spot wasn't working as the villain, and there was a time when Pav wasn't working, and we had a whole sequence in India, and we wanted to do something where Miles was going somewhere that was overwhelming, and he felt like he was in a whole new universe, and everything felt different. But something about the scene just felt kind of boring, and a team of Indian animators. One cool thing about making a movie with 1,000 people, there are people from all over the world, from all sorts of different backgrounds and cultures, wrote an email to us going we don't think Pav is good enough yet, and we don't think he's cool enough or specific enough or accurate enough. And one thing you can do is just sort of ignore that and be like, no, it's fine. And then the better thing to do is to go, okay, let's figure out how we can make him better. And so we had a Zoom with all of them to be like, okay, tell me what you think isn't working and what you think might make it better. And then we put together a room of Indian and Indian American writers to totally re-break that section of the story. And in one day, we had so many ideas that ended up being on a screen a few weeks later. And it turned around from being one of the most boring parts of the movie to a really, really charming and wonderful part that people felt like it felt truer to them, more interesting. The character was cooler and more specific, and it was all because we just listened to the crew, and that was a really good lesson for everybody, is that not to be super precious about the things that they make, and to listen to other people's ideas, and if people are telling you it can be better, then listen to them.
Yeah, Phil, you were talking about when you watch a film with Amy, and she says what she likes and what she doesn't like. Yeah. Was there any characters, Amy, when you first were watching these that you maybe didn't love and you had notes for, or were there ones that you did love that got left out?
Okay, so I can talk about Spot.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was a really hard character to get right, because he was so stupid. And the idea of somebody who is weak and evil because they're weak, because something is missing in them, and that's represented by having literal holes in you, was such a good idea, but he was so hard to make work because the villain is usually bad and strong and evil. And these guys, instead of, and I kept going, oh God, it's not gonna work, you guys, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work. It's who's scared of Spot? And the truth is, and it's what everybody has been saying here, what you don't just say, forget it then. You just dig deeper, deeper, deeper into that character, deeper into what you believed about that character, deeper into what makes that character tick, and you can find it. And one of the joys of working on movies with everybody who I'm sitting with up here is that they never give up and they never listen to it's not going to work. In fact, if you say it's not going to work, that will be the thing that they focus on forever. But that's what makes great filmmaker.
Great. How about right there? Go ahead.
My name is Enrique, and I'm a senior. I just wanted to ask, like, is there a process on, like, deciding which Spider-Person gets to be, like, a main character? Like, how did you decide Spider-Man India is going to be, like, a part of the movie with, like a whole segment in the film? And, yeah.
Yeah, how do you balance so many? I mean, every one of these characters probably could have their own spin-off where they'd have a fully fleshed out story, and you see their character enough in that, and that's why I'm saying it. But so how do you balance deciding who's going to take the lead more? You know, Gwen seems to take the lead more right from the start, and we get her in the finish as well. But some of those other choices of, you know, the characters we saw from the first film who don't appear until like the very end, like Noir and things like that.
I mean, it all comes out of telling the story, right? We have all sorts of ideas, like lists of fun characters and people that we could do, but really, we're telling a story about Miles and a specific journey that Miles goes on. And so, at every step of the way, we need how this character relates to Miles is what drives it. So, in the case of Pav, it was like, Miles needed to go to a new world that had a new whole way of being that felt totally different from his world. And the idea of setting that in like a Bombay meets New York felt like it would be totally overwhelming sights and sounds. And there was a character, Spider-Man India, that seemed like that could be a really fun character. And it could serve to Miles as like, this kid is brand new at being Spider-Man and he's already on the team, and why am I not on the team? And so that was why we chose him to be in. Same like I was saying about Punk, was that we felt like we wanted someone that Miles would think was going to be an antagonist to him, like somebody who was cooler than him, somebody who like was getting on with Gwen well, but ended up being a person who was his ally when everybody else wasn't. And so the story wanted him to be there. And every time we had other characters that, you know, we thought would be fun and interesting, but if they didn't have a purpose in telling Miles' emotional story, they just would fall away and wouldn't make it to the forefront. And if they were important in telling that story, you had to sort of listen to what the story wanted, and that's what made the choices.
Yeah, if Gwen's going to kind of betray Miles, we need to know why. So it took a whole reel of the film to tell you why.
Sometimes your characters tell you, right, what their story is going to be. So who's writing out there in the audience? Writing your own stories, your characters? You know, think about that. Let your characters simmer and let them tell you. You can trauma over there? They're calling it, you're late. Get down
I'm
there.
like, oh my God, I forgot my permission slip.
All right, let's go down here. You might want to, how long do these usually last? A minute? Go ahead, you can talk over.
My name is Na. I'm a junior, and my question for you guys is that if you could have your own animated movie, would you be like a supervillain or a superhero, and what would that movie be about?
Ooh. I don't know if everyone wants to take that on.
That is a wild question.
It's a great question.
Yeah, I think what I love about this iteration of Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse is that these characters sort of have a duality within them. And it's a space that I find really interesting, even going back to any other project I've been a part of. Usually the villains, there's some part of the villain story that I really relate to and I really sympathize with, and I think that makes for a good villain. So I think, honestly, I'd probably ride both lines, because there are days where I feel like a really jealous jerk because such and such is happening, and then I gotta fight that with trying to realize, hey, let's try to be bigger than this. And I think it's that daily struggle, it's that very human struggle that we all go through that makes these characters interesting. So yeah, I'd be right in the middle.
I'd probably be a villain who is redeemed at the end in my death. Now that I think about it, I want
Would
to
you have
be
one
like
of those long, drawn-out, agonizing ones, or would you go quickly?
I really dug Killmonger, you know what I'm saying? In Black Panther, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I like that kind of villain. You know what I mean? He's kind of right about a lot of stuff, and he's doing bad stuff, but he kind of gets redeemed in death, and I'm like, that's my bag. I'd be a villain who is redeemed in death.
I would definitely be the reluctant hero. I think that's like, I'm the guy who's like I'm the introvert who's being forced to be an extrovert at all times. And wish I could just be in my room drawing, but my job and what I do for a living and what I love to do, it requires me to interact with 1,000 people a day. So it's like, and then you have to rise to that, and you have to rise to that challenge. And I think that's the same thing with having a family, with having friends, everything. You're constantly being asked to take on things that you didn't expect to. And I think, the defining characteristic of my life is just I've always been inspired by people who could rise to that challenge, and I've tried to do that myself. And so I guess that's what it would be. I don't know.
I'm glad that you brought up being an introvert, because oftentimes, like we know who we are, right, in our space and what we're comfortable with, but like in a job you want to be successful in, you feel like you have to be extroverted and you have to be open. But a lot of times artists, and I found that a lot of times in my interaction with animation artists, they tend to be very introverted, but they can come out when they need to. And don't be afraid of your personality and being shy at some points and knowing when to speak up at other points. Amy, is Barbarella, is that your answer? Or do you? Barbarella is your answer again?
I'm going to answer the question differently. I think what makes a movie really good is that every single character is the hero of their own story. So whether you are the lead character, the protagonist, or the antagonist, even the antagonist's view and what they want are as relevant and as important as the thing that the protagonist wants. And I think that it doesn't matter which one you are if you completely believe authentically in what that character is doing.
Chris, Phil, you want to answer this one? Or?
I was just going to mention that the idea of that there are a lot of different kinds of personalities that do this job. That if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to make a film within your personality. You can't front and act like, you're, it's 6.5 feet tall unless you're like Kemp and Joaquin, then you are, and you can be, and then, but you have to direct within your personality. The audience will bust you if you're faking it. And the thing that's amazing about this project in particular, but all the stuff that everybody up here has done, is that it's when you make something that only you could make, people are dying to see it. It's money in the bank. Think about your favorite filmmakers, like Taika and Greta, and think of the places you guys are, like the Bay Area. It's like George Lucas, Francis Coppola, Ryan Coogler, Boots Riley. These are all singular filmmakers with really different points of view. And this movie is about how a singular way that, they all have the same, power, right? But it's all super individuated. And the movie's about this one specific kid and the way he does the job and how important it is to preserve that and not force him into a specific way of doing it.
That's great. So you guys are being so great right now, but I want to be respectful of your energy and your time, and also I know how exciting the prospect of being able to come up and talk with everybody is. So what I want to do is I want to take one or two more questions. For those of you who are waiting, before we finish, I'm going to have you stand up, and all of your classmates, these are the students who get to go up to the filmmakers first, all right? And then I want to prompt, would you guys be okay if we finished? I love the Williamsburg Bank sequence. I feel like you have a clip from that as well.
Yeah, sure.
It might be nice to finish and maybe just talk a little bit about that, because it's such a beautiful moment and it feels like such a connecting point for teens as well. Let's go there.
I'm a junior, and I know like a soundtrack is very important to a movie. So how did you all like agree that Metro Boomin was the producer? And was it like a certain rubric you wanted to like the product, or did you just let him like do whatever for the features?
We in the first movie we wanted the soundtrack to feel like it was Miles' playlist, and so we wanted to do the same sort of idea for this, and it was obviously opening it up to more worlds and more things, and so the idea came to us to have Metro come and be involved, and he seemed like a perfect fit, not just because of Heroes and Villains, but because he was like he's a young, sensitive, creative guy, and he's a very thoughtful person. We all got to. He came in and visited. We showed him some like really early, really unfinished clips of the movie, going like, that probably doesn't make sense, but he totally got it and totally emotionally related to it, and it was a very cool process. We would send him clips of things and say like, we're looking for something here that's very like sweet and emotional, and here we're looking for something that's fun and exciting and has some drive, and here we're looking for something that feels a little like, there's a little bit of wistfulness and regret. And he would like play a bunch of tracks that he had developed that weren't finished at all, sometimes with like temp voices on them or no voices on them, just like some beats and stuff. And we would go like, oh, maybe this could fit here, maybe this could fit here, and we'd try different things in different spots, and sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't, and if it wouldn't, we'd say, okay, what else do you have that's like this? And then if there was something that was close, then we would go back and forth, and he would develop it further and keep working on it, and he would look at the scene and he would understand what we would need. And sometimes for in a movie, there's like a turn in the scene where like it's feeling one way and then it changes, and so we would be like, is there any way that we can have some moves in the song to accompany that? And maybe you don't even need it in the song the way it is as a track, but for the movie, let's do it. And always he would like find a way to make it work for the movie and also for the song itself. He was so smart, so easy to collaborate with, and he was just it was a real fun and joyous experience.
And just to point out, like something about when we're making the movie, we often use temp music. Before we bring on a producer to do the music, we're just pulling from a variety of different songs and dropping them into the scenes. And for this film, we picked a wide variety. Like you have reggaeton, you have like hip hop, you have like lots of different types of music. And what's so great is that, Metro collaborates with such a wide variety of different artists that he's able to kind of touch all of those kind of different genres within his own work. So you can get everyone from like, a Coi Leray to like a Don Toliver to like a James Blake. Like you can get all the different kinds of music that we were representing in our temp music through the work of like one versatile producer who works with so many different kinds of artists in different genres. So it was really like a perfect fit, I think, for our film.
Did you have to step it up at all? Like, the first film, everyone just right out of the gates was like, this is so innovative. We haven't seen things like this, the way the music was used, but the way the images were used as well. And now we're seeing sort of those copycats coming out now that are trying to replicate your work, maybe with some success and not so much success. Did you have to do that with the music as well? Because the music right from the start for the first film was so iconic. It's like you have to replicate it because the fans want it, but then you also have to step it up a little as well. So what kinds of things, was it working with the composer and maybe challenging your composer to do something a little bit different in the second film?
Yeah, I mean, it's with all this stuff, it's like, the success needs to give you confidence to like go harder, basically. So like with everybody at this table, all of our collaborators are like, how can we be more ambitious? And Daniel Pemberton, who's the composer of the movie, who does all the non-Metro music, like 3 years ago, we would like say like, hey, there's going to be a character named Miguel O'Hara, like Spider-Man 2099. Like, what do you think it sounds like? And this is what it's going to look like. Send us some weird stuff. And he would send us some weird, like, oh, I invented a new synthesizer. What do you? Right. He's like, I think he's going to have this, like, signature sound. right? Now it's like all over TikTok. But like, you know, that it's not different from how Metro works. He like sculpts a song, right? He like adds things to it. It's like, here's a weird string line. Like, what if this person was in, you know, oh, my friend's in the neighborhood, maybe they'll like come and sing on it. Like, you know, that process of accumulating ideas in a movie, like a painting, is sort of like the way we'd like to work anyway.
All right, do me a favor. Who was in line who was going to ask a question? Stand up right now. Stand up if you were going to ask a question. All right, all of you, when we go out into the lobby, classmates, look at your classmates here. They are first in line. Do not cut in front of them. I want them to go up and ask a question. Thank you for all of your questions so far. But do you guys mind if we finish with that clip and you can tell us a little bit about it? I mean, visually it's so amazing, so maybe just give us a little, you know, from all your perspectives of the scene and like what it means to the film and just like how you created it. And then after we're done here, after the clip, I'm gonna lead you guys out. So stay in your seats until after the clip is done and I lead you out. You wanna start off, Phil? Who wants to prompt
I would
us
just
with
mention that like, the thing that's I think extraordinary about this scene and like difficult to pull off in animation is like the things that are unsaid, the gestures and the way people look in order to avoid saying something, the placement of the camera, the idea that like Gwen is feeling upside down in her like point of view and experience, and so literally we turned it around to experience that. The difference between just having one of the characters on screen or backing the camera up and shooting across one person to the other one. Are we in front of them? Are we behind? Why are we behind? Those kinds of choices that seem trivial, like they're so hard and there's a year's worth of meetings to figure them out.
I'll say anecdotally, you know, that building is sort of based on a real world building. And we staged it a million different ways, and we had them sitting under an arch for a long time. And I can remember specifically you, Phil, saying, I want them to have nothing around them. They're hanging over the city with nothing to hold them up. And we said, I mean, what do you want, like a diving board hanging off this thing? Yes. We were like, that doesn't look right. It's like, it doesn't matter. They need to be out there. They need to be out, and you do not think about that. You're so locked into the emotionality of the scene. They could have been on a jet wing hanging off the side of the thing. You wouldn't think about it because you're so drawn in by the power of the emotion. So I will say, as a producer, you took the Amy role in that one because we watched that one a million different times, and you started moving around and going, I need them out over the city. I need them out over the city.
But also the subtlety of the acting and the way that it feels observed and like a real thing and not sort of, you know, stock. Like people aren't going like, like the way that people don't actually do. That's very, very subtle in the acting. So I think that's the thing that's
the subtlety in the animation we'll see. For those of you who are animation people out there, but think about your live action, because I think this film is really a live action film that happens to be animated as well. But notice that in your characters and how, if you're working with your fellow students in acting, just sort of like the naturalistic performances that we see in the whole film, but in this particular scene. Anybody want to add?
I just want to say one more thing. It is the most quintessential Spider-Man scene in the movie because it's about the thing that, whether it's Miles or Peter or Gwen or anyone else who's Spider-Man, it's about the thing that Spider-Man wants the most, which is for somebody to love him.
And you can speak truly to that because you produced the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, right? You've got a lot of Spider-Man
have been
experience.
together for a long time. I'm his aunt.
Does anybody want to, Justin, do you want to say one more thing before we queue up?
Just one more thing. When you watch the lighting, it's also storytelling. Gwen and Miles, they're looking out at this horizon, all the possibilities of what their lives could turn out, how they could turn out. They're looking out and they're seeing Manhattan, and we made it purposely. We just had a lot of conversations, talked about a lot of different ways to do it, but it's magical. And the more they talk, the more they connect, the more sparkly and magical and shimmery the world they're seeing gets in front of them. But you see that light is going away because they both know that this opportunity for them to be together is also leaving. So the sun is setting. So it's all storytelling, it's all narrative, even though, and then how it's hitting Miles's face, how the light is hitting Miles's face and how it's hitting Gwen's face depending on which shot we're looking at. Also, sometimes Miles is in shadow or Gwen is in shadow, depending on who's hiding their feelings. So all these things also are part of the narrative that you're actually seeing and feeling.
So many subtleties, and I encourage you to watch other scenes in the film and think about those little aspects, the acting, the lighting, the music, all of that. But thanks for setting up that clip. Let's watch. Should we just sit here awkwardly under the screen? Let's do it. You guys have done it many times before.
Sitting awkwardly is my forte.
All right, Garth.
You and me, we're the same. In the important ways, you know?
In every other universe, Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man. And in every other universe, it doesn't end well.
Well, it's the first time for everything, right?
I heard some when they reached for their hands.
It's
they
funny
didn't do
too
it.
because we talk about that moment has ended up so thematically representing our entire film, and you asked an earlier question about how do you match what and from the first film, I think Leap of Faith was one of the most iconic shots, and we made it a point we want to do something different and something subtler. It doesn't have to be as explosive as Leap of Faith. We don't need a single that's like Sunflower. We want to have a vibe that permeates the entire film, and it's more contemplative in this one. And I think that's not a coincidence that we're not trying to match Leap of Faith, and this on its own ended up kind of I think the most iconic image from the film is them quietly sitting upside down.
Yeah, and it hits you just as hard as Leap of Faith.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it just hits you in a different way.
Yeah, they're in an impossible situation.
Yeah.
They're in love and they can't be together.
Love.
What's better than that?
So I want to give you all plenty of time out in the lobby. So when we get out there, I'm going to spread all of our guests out. You have a nice big lobby out there. You've all been so respectful of your classmates when they're asking their questions. Let's continue that respect when we're out there. Give everybody some space. We're still wary of COVID time. So give space, give time to ask a question if you want to take photos. I think that's cool, right, guys? Photos, okay? And we have about 20, 25 minutes, so we should have plenty of time for you all to interact. Move around, ask lots of questions. Do you know what you get tagged on if you're doing Spider-Verse? What's Instagram? Is it just Spider-Verse?
I assume so.
Kira, what should they tag if they're taking a photo? Hashtag Spider-Verse. So if you take photos, which I think is great. This film came out a long time ago, but it's getting into awards season. Let's tag this film in your photos if you're comfortable with it and get the momentum going into awards season. I hope we're all fingers crossed for nominations this year. You can also tag SF Film. We would love if you tagged SF Film so we can spread the word of the work we're doing with students around the Bay. We're going to send out feedback to your teachers to see how today went. I'd like to hear what you all thought as well. But let's give a round of applause for our guests. Thank you, guys. This was truly incredible to have you here. Why don't you all head down the ramp there. Head down the ramp there, head on outside. Bring your multiple water bottles. And students, again, make sure those classmates who are going to ask questions get to ask their questions first. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your time outside in the lobby. Cheryl wants to say something.
Don't forget to scan the QR codes that are in the lobby. There's also one right here by the door. They're on the pillars in the lobby. That's how you'll get your absence excused for fourth period. Or for second period, for that matter.